Go ahead and get started. Tonight we're going to start with summarizing what we heard at our first public comment period. Then we will review the non-motorized transportation elements, the planning and environmental process, I-25 alignment options, and the interstate exchange options. We will then talk through how to leave public comments, how to stay engaged during the study, and then open it up to questions. I want to take a quick moment for our presenters to introduce themselves. Again, my name is Adriana Day, and I'm working with a consulting in public involvement, and I'm excited to see such a great turnout tonight.
Hello, good evening. My name is Summer Herrera. I work for NMDOT, and I'm the project development engineer overseeing the study and working with Horrocks.
Hello, my name is Mike Worrell. I am with Horrocks, and I'm the project manager for the consultant team working with Summer. And it is really nice to see so many familiar faces, and I hope we continue to see you come to these meetings.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nicole Tolley, and I'm the consultant environmental lead.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Alonso Martinez. I'm in the engineer part of the consultant team, and would like to thank you for showing up this evening.
Thank you all. I'm going to hand things over to Summer to get us started on recapping the first public comment period.
During the first public meeting, we introduced you to the study area, the I-25 corridor from Avenida Cesar Chavez to Lomas Boulevard. This includes the interstate and surface streets that cross I-25. In cooperation with the Federal Highway Administration, FHWA, we're conducting an environmental study to explore a transportation solution that improves safety and mobility. What you see on the map for the study area is wider than the actual footprint of any potential project. This is intentional so that the team looks at potential environmental effects of transportation improvements. We have shared a flyer summarizing what we heard from the public. I'm going to take a couple of minutes before we get into new information to cover your input because it's very important to the study team to consider. Thank you for your valuable input. The study team received 163 total comments. That's a great turnout. Not only that, but the people took time to fill out our full survey, which had a lot of questions for you to weigh in on. And those specific questions helped the study team in the early stages to understand your perspectives. Additionally, 50 emails were received, and we took comments in our Q&A, mailed in forms, calls, and a letter was received. We focused the first public meeting on 4 categories we called the universe of ideas: I-25 alignment, I-25 accessibility, surface street accessibility, and non-motorized transportation. Overall, there was public support to improve each of these categories. We had an exercise in our survey packet and online for people to draw in where they would like the alignment to shift to. Based on our conversations at the public meeting, we are not surprised to see community in support of shifting I-25 to the east. We're going to talk more later about all the options that we've looked at, but we wanted to share the map with you all. Lastly, in the other categories, people are most familiar with one-way frontage roads, braided ramps as potential solutions to improve I-25 accessibility. Individuals are more comfortable using barrier-separated pedestrian and bicycle facilities, and that's consistent to what we're also hearing on other projects. There is public support for better access to Avenida Cesar Chavez, Central Avenue, and Litt Avenue. To see this flyer or read our full detailed report of the first public comment period, you can find them on our study website. Next, Nicole is going to speak to adjustments the study team has made based on public input.
Thanks, Summer. So one of the main reasons for the first public outreach effort in the fall was to receive input from you on the transportation needs that you see in your community. And then we use that information to refine what we call the purpose and need, or the reason for the improvements. So based on the feedback we received, we adjusted our purpose statement to include the importance of improving travel time reliability in the area, both on I-25 itself and then in surface streets crossing I-25. So the full purpose statement now reads, to improve safety, improve travel time reliability, prepare for future travel demand, and replace aging infrastructure on I-25 between mileposts 223 and 225, and to accommodate non-motorized transportation across the I-25 corridor. On this slide, you can see the transportation needs that support this purpose statement, including a need for roadway geometry improvements that will accommodate the appropriate design speed, a need to reduce crashes within the S-curve area, a need to provide a safer driver experience by reducing driver workload around the S-curve. So in this area, drivers need to merge and weave and stay in their lanes and navigate all at the same time. So reducing this driver workload will produce a safer driving experience. And then there's a need to prepare for increased traffic resulting from regional growth. There's a need to improve infrastructure, such as bridges and drainage facilities that have reached the end of their service life. There's a need to accommodate alternative modes of travel across I-25. And then finally, there's a need to improve this section of I-25 to provide compatibility with the planned transportation network. So next, Alonzo is going to provide an update on the non-motorized transportation elements.
Thank you, Nicole. We are working to consider non-motorized transportation improvements in future combined alternatives. We want to identify solutions that accommodate facilities and are inviting to users. As we continue to review ideas, we are thinking through 3 questions. Question number 1, how do potential walking and biking improvements tie into existing or planned facilities? Within the study area, there are 6 streets that cross I-25, each with their own characteristic, making a one-size-fits-all approach impossible. What may work at Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard under I-25 may not work at Central Avenue. Our team meets regularly with the city of Albuquerque and has met with advocacy groups, but we want to hear from you too. Question number 2, where are the hotspots for crashes involving pedestrians and cyclists? Due to the high pedestrian fatality rates in the region, it is important that we work on bringing the data, stakeholders, and approaches together to enhance safety. The crash hotspots shown in these graphics are from our partners at the Mid-Region Council of Governments, also known as Mr. COG. You can see from these maps, for both pedestrians and cyclists, the biggest hotspots are at Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard and Ladd Avenue. In your survey packets, let us know what your experience has been along these corridors. And question number 3, what facilities get the most pedestrian activity? We use a tool called the Pedestrian Composite Index that is compiled by Mr. COG that shows where pedestrian activity is expected to be the greatest based on the existing attractions. You can see on the screen, most of the cross streets in the study area are showing high activity. This is shown by the color purple. Improving walkability and safety in these locations should be prioritized if suitable facilities do not already exist. We will continue to work with other area stakeholders to expand the improvements that move forward after this study to provide critical links, since the study area and subsequent project footprint will be limited. We recognize destinations such as schools, bus stops, and grocery stores are a draw for non-motorized transportation activity. Again, let us know in your survey packets what facilities you are using the most. Nicole is now going to review the alternative development process and explain what comes next for non-motorized transportation after the public comment period.
Thanks, Alonzo. So this graphic is an overview of the alternatives development and screening process. It shows where we're currently at in the process and then how we plan to identify a preferred alternative. So we're currently at this stage for today's public meeting. So we've taken our universe of ideas that we presented at our last public meeting and divided it up into 3 buckets: I-25 alignment, interstate exchange, and non-motorized transportation. We've identified 9 I-25 build alignment options and 6 interstate exchange options. And these have gone through an initial screening based on the purpose and need we discussed earlier. We've narrowed these down to 3 alignment options and 3 interstate exchange options. And Mike is going to discuss in detail each of those options later in the presentation. For non-motorized, as Alonzo explained, we understand the importance of pedestrian and bicyclist travel through this area, and we're continuing to evaluate existing conditions, regional plans, and will incorporate non-motorized solutions into the next phase of our alternative development and analysis process. So the next step is to combine the advanced options for the alignment and interstate exchange with the non-motorized transportation ideas to form distinct alternatives. We'll then perform detailed traffic analyses, safety analyses, and environmental investigations, and conduct a level 2 screening, which will result in the identification of a preferred alternative. We'll then advance both the preferred alternative and the no-build alternative to phase 1C in the process, or the environmental documentation, for further detailed analysis. And at this point, we'll be analyzing items like noise. We understand that noise is a concern for the public, and we'll be conducting analyses to determine if noise walls are feasible and reasonable in accordance with the department's noise abatement policy. I also want to address another concern we heard at the last public meeting. We received a lot of questions and input about why we are even considering shifting I-25 to the west. So as part of the National Environmental Policy Act process, or the NEPA process, we need to assess the effects of proposed actions before any decisions are made. We need to consider and evaluate a wide range of alternatives, including alternatives that would shift west or east or maybe somewhere in the middle. And we need to consider that wide range so that we can demonstrate and document and justify that we've ultimately identified a preferred alternative that meets the purpose and need and minimizes environmental impacts. So as we move through this process and continue to assess the effects of these options and alternatives, we'll continue to seek input from you. So I'm going to hand it off to Mike now to talk through the I-25 alignment options and then the interstate exchange options.
All right, thank you. As Nicole mentioned, that we considered 9 different built alignments along with the no-build option. We've called them different options, and as we walk through these, they basically roughly progress from west to east, but they include different curvatures for the different curves, and they include different separation between them. And again, as Nicole mentioned, they represent a broad range to make sure that we're considering all the potentials out there. In the end, when we identify a preferred alternative that we want to move forward, or the department wants to move forward, it will be that alternative that best meets the purpose and need while minimizes the impacts as well. So just keep that in mind as we walk through and go through these. As I mentioned, we identified and developed 9 different alignment options in addition to the no-build. So there are a total of 10 in consideration tonight. And we've evaluated those and narrowed those down. Is that this isn't necessarily probably the easiest place to look at them on this screen behind me. They're all on different boards out in the hall. And I think it's a lot easier to kind of see the nuances between them as you mingle around. And we'll be around for quite some time after the presentation, question and answer, that we can look at those with you. At this point in the study, as Nicole mentioned, we have not analyzed the detail with regard to the environmental resources or those particular community aspects that we need to fully consider all the way through. This represents a higher level analysis at this point. And so this level 1 screening basically addresses how well these different options address the purpose and need that we've defined. So what we've done is we've weighed these different options against what we're referring to as measures of effectiveness. And these are really just elements of that purpose and need that Nicole described. And in this evaluation, we really considered 3 measures of effectiveness. Number 1, how well these options improve geometry and reduce overall driver workload by straightening the S-curve. For those of you that were at the last public meeting back in November, we talked a lot about driver workload and how many things are going on for for motorists that are driving through the interstate area. They're having to deal with this curvilinear alignment, as well as a lot of on-ramp and off-ramp, merging and weaving going on, and then needing to be in the right place in the right lane for when they reach the I-40 interchange, say. So there's a lot of things on the driver's mind, and that overall driver workload plays out in how safe or unsafe a facility. And we feel like in this particular location that that's a key factor in it. So we're looking at how well these reduce the driver workload. Then we considered how well each of these improves safety by reducing crashes. And we did perform a quantitative analysis of what we estimate the crash reduction percentages to be with each of these. The American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials has developed what they call a highway safety manual, and that's a tool that we as engineers use a lot when we're evaluating safety of facilities. They develop predictive measures for how well different facilities will perform with regard to safety and what their crash experience might be. So we evaluated each of these options with regard to that for this particular measure. Then the last thing, and this kind of went to some of the enhancement that we heard from the last public meeting, was how well that this different option provides speed consistency or consistency throughout the entire interstate corridor as people are approaching this particular S-curve area. It's a unique area when you compare it and contrast it to all the other interstate areas of the interstate throughout the urban area. And so we think that represents some challenges for motorists and affects safety as well. So that was the last measure of effectiveness. So in the end, we're kind of assessing, do these different options or sufficiently address purpose and need? Because if they don't address the reasons why we would implement improvements, why would we go to that trouble? So we gave qualitative ranking of each of these based on the information we analyzed, and hopefully this is somewhat self-intuitive, but green, essentially good, red, not so good or bad, and probably not much more to explain with that. So you'll see these symbols in different matrices attached to these different options, both here and then out on the boards out in Station 2. This is the analysis with regard to the no-build option. And as we looked at the no-build option, it did not fare as well as we would like and didn't feel like it addressed the purpose and need sufficiently. So hopefully that's apparent, for otherwise why would we all be doing this tonight? So, but we'll move the no-build option forward regardless. Then option A, and again, as we walk through these 9 build options, they kind of start from a westerly shift. There being 2 curves, so the westerly shift more or less shifts the northern curve in most cases to the west and straightens that out to an extent. But there's different configurations of different radii of the different curves, and then separation varies between the curves. If you can envision that the nature of the alignment is not just how tight the curves are, but how the spacing of the curves, because you're transitioning from one curve to the next. So the tighter the transition, the more difficult that is to negotiate. So as we compare and contrast these things, that's what these evaluations are measuring. So option A has a shift somewhat to the west, pretty curvilinear alignment. Option B straightens that out a little bit more along the northern curve. And again, I think it's easier to probably look at these in detail out on the boards. So, but it also improves some of those measures of effectiveness somewhat. Option C really straightens it out, and it actually moves the alignment quite a ways to the west, adjacent to the lead and coal area, and really straightens that out and pushes the northern curve further to the north and flattens it quite a lot. This performs quite well in all of the analysis and addresses those purpose and need measures of effectiveness quite well. So that shows up in the symbology here. Option D, less of a shift to the west. but also straightens the alignment and separates the curves enough such that it does improve upon those measures of effectiveness quite well. Option E, a little bit less so. Again, each alignment is slightly nuanced, but they're moving a little bit more towards the center of where things are at. And then there are two options, F and G here, that are very, very similar, that fall very close to the alignment. And you can see it most. And as you look at these, each of these kind of have an envelope that shows a width. There is some background in that. I believe we estimated a 240-foot width, and that would contain a lot of improvements for what we're thinking are necessary down the line. But there's nothing that represents a final design here. But they basically envelopes that present. But these lay over top of the existing alignment more down the middle of the road. Euphemism maybe, that may not apply very well. But for those of you that remember, there was a study that was completed in 2016 that had a preferred alternative that came out of that. These two alignments are very closely match what was recommended out of that study, F and G. So the department, in the hindsight of the last few years and the experience they've gained over the last few years, felt like these did not flatten those curves and straighten that alignment sufficiently to improve the safety enough and reduce crashes enough. So these did not do as well with regard to each of those measures of effectiveness as some of the others. Then as we move on to option H, this is shifting more to the east, and most of that shift occurs in the southern part of the study area adjacent to that southern curve. And this didn't quite address the measures of effectiveness as well. And then our final option that we laid out is another pretty straight alignment and more straightening of the curve to the south, separates the curves quite a bit, and improves really all of those measures of effectiveness quite well. So as a result of this, on the next slide, we kind of show them in total. We're proposing as a study team to forward 3 build alternatives along with the no build, option with regard to alignment, and move those forward to the next stage of the study. So those being options C, D, and I. Probably an obvious question is like, what are the impacts of these? As Nicole mentioned, the next stage of this study will move more into a more detailed stage of identifying specifically the resources that exist and the nature of those and what the impacts. That being said, most of the resources that we have to do with neighborhoods, specific populations, cultural resources, and in this case, that usually translates to historic properties or properties with historic buildings. And at this level of the study, we basically looked at those properties that have buildings that are 50 years and older. The next stage of this, we will look more detail into the history of each of the properties that we potentially affect, and understand the substantial nature, how substantial or not substantial that is with regard to the historic context that they fall in, and analyze those in much more detail. But we were able to kind of take a higher level look, and looking at that, amongst those options that we propose to forward, option C has more impact to those types of resources, particularly, again, to potentially historic properties. Option D has pretty high level of impacts as well, not quite as much as C. And then option I has, at least with regard to the 3, has the least of it. That doesn't mean it doesn't have impacts. There are historic buildings and historic properties all over, and we are affecting some with this option as well. But the level and the magnitude of those impacts are less than the others. The next category that we looked at was what we called interstate exchange. That may not be the best term, a little wonky, but what we basically mean by that is configuration of the ramps and how people are accessing the freeway or getting off the freeway to gain access to the community. Basically how the interstate is relating with the local streets and the local transportation network and with Albuquerque in general. So as we look at this, the existing condition, the ramps were configured and the interchanges were built at a time when speeds were much lower than they are, vehicles were much less sophisticated than they are today, and the spacing that we apply today is much greater. The length of the ramps is much greater. We allow much more space for merging and weaving between those. And so that really is all the things we're looking at with regard to interstate exchange. We developed what we call six build options with regard to this, in addition to the no build, which we'll forward as well. And I'll describe these. These are a little bit tough to describe from a distance, and I really invite you to spend some time with the boards, but I can describe them in general. And we evaluated these against a set of measures of effectiveness, again, that go back to that purpose and need. Number one is how well the different options improve geometry, reducing driver workload, updating the interchange spacing, ramp spacing, and ramp length to meet current design standards. We also looked at how well it improves safety and reduces driver workload along I-25 by reducing the number and consolidating the ramps and simplifying them. We considered how well that relates to the frontage road system that is in place today and how well they may reduce potential decision or conflict points along those frontage roads. And then how well or to what extent it limits out of direction travel or changes patterns of what people expect today. Then we have a number of critical services, key destinations, key employers in the area, the central business district. We also considered how well these different options maintain those traffic patterns, maintain accessibility to all of those features, to all of those key locations and destinations. And then the last thing being, how well the option replaces existing or an aging infrastructure. Last time we talked a lot about the age of the infrastructure, which much of it was built in 1961, which same age as me, we're getting old, so we need replacement. But that's what that last measure of effectiveness plays to. Our scoring, a little bit more simple with regard to this. We had just kind of a 3-level scoring on this, and again, green good, red bad on this. We evaluated the no build, and as you might imagine, since it has pretty congested ramp spacing, operational issues, heard a lot of people talk about the weaving and merging that's complicated with some of those and some of the ramps. So this doesn't address those as well, holding things according to the no build. So we basically determined this doesn't sufficiently address the purpose and need. Options A and B are very similar, and I'll kind of try to describe those simply. Probably the major features of these is that the ramps on the north end of Cesar Chavez and the ramps south of Cole, whether they be on or off ramps, we extended and lengthened those, and we're proposing to introduce a braided ramp between those two so that the traffic is not weaving. It also includes removal of the on-ramp northbound north of lead. Option B is very, very similar. The only difference between option A and B is that option B leaves in the off-ramp southbound to lead. So the next two options are options that contemplate what was brought up with the study from the 2016 study. This option C was the configuration that was proposed as the preferred alternative. Probably the highlighting feature of this is that it includes a closure of the on-ramp south of Cole to southbound I-25. And then for those people in the lead and Cole area that wish to go southbound on I-25, they would then need to go north on the northbound frontage road to Central, and then they would loop around on a new, what we refer to as an advanced U-turn. Most people refer to them in this part of the country as Texas turnarounds, but we're not in Texas, so that we call them advanced U-turns. And you would go north to loop around at Central to go back south and get on the on-ramp from Central to southbound I-25 if you wanted. Option D is very, very similar. The only difference is that it doesn't have those advanced U-turns or the Texas turnaround movements at Central. Options, E and F are quite progressive, quite a bit different. Take a little bit to describe it. It basically extends that one. They wouldn't be frontage roads, but it extends the frontage system south to Cesar Chavez, well, on both sides, northbound and southbound. So what that means then, if you wanted to gain access to the central area of this and access those frontage roads, you would get off south of Cesar Chavez, go through the signalized intersection of Cesar Chavez, which would then be a local street, continue parallel along the I-25, and then gain back into the frontage road as it exists today. But it's basically extending that frontage road system all the way south past Cesar Chavez, so then the on and off ramps, you'd get on and off south of Cesar Chavez. This one also includes eliminating that braided ramp south between Central and Lead, so it basically moves all that south. If you can imagine what this requires, it's a lot for those travelers that are gaining access to this area. It's a lot more travel on the frontage road system off of the main line than you have today. This option E also includes an addition of a ramp just south of Lomas, because if you can imagine, if you're on this frontage road system through the Big I or in the I-40 interchange area, if you didn't have a ramp there, you'd be going all the way past Cesar Chavez before you could get back on the freeway. So this particular option E contains an additional ramp to get on just south of Lomas. And then the difference between E and F is it doesn't include that ramp. So that's the primary difference. But the main things that differentiate these is that it really extends that frontage road system all the way past Cesar Chavez. So in total, we're proposing to forward 3 of the 6, and we're proposing not to forward D, E, and F for a number of reasons, but primarily because of the disruption it provides to gaining access to many of the key destinations and key critical facilities in the area. So we're requiring people to exit the freeway much further south and travel along the freeway off of the highway before they can access that stuff. And it's increasing the out of direction travel enough that we think it's more problematic than it creates probably more problems than it solves. So we're proposing not to forward either E or F. And then we just don't like D very well, because moving all of that traffic that's in the Lead and Coal area through a couple signalized intersections at Central, as you can imagine, is just going to congest those signals beyond probably what they're capable of handling. So that did not forward. C, if you notice and you look at the evaluation matrices, you'll notice that it did not fare very well with regard to those measures of effectiveness. But our study team has opted to forward that to the next level, because we feel like, because it was the preferred alternative from the last study, and the last study studied a much longer length of the I-25 corridor, that we need to do more in-depth traffic analysis to make sure we're not missing something if we were to eliminate it. So it's more of a we feel like we're performing due diligence by forwarding it. So as we look at these, and how well they fared, kind of comparison, the A, B, and C options A and B, we felt like fared better with regard to those measures of effectiveness than C did. So hopefully that's apparent as you look. And if it's not, we can talk about it more back at the matrices. There's some really big boards against the back wall. So where do we go from here? We've got some key milestones yet. This is a pretty comprehensive study. We're trying to do our due diligence, bring all of the information that we're considering forward, and making sure that we're hearing you as we go through it. And we're trying to allow adequate time to engage in the conversations and hear all of your concerns. We are going to take the information from this analysis and what we hear tonight, and then combine all of these different options into distinct, complete alternatives that would work as complete alternatives, and then evaluate those in much greater detail, and present a next level of screening that we would propose sometime in the fall of this year. Then we're proposing to present a preferred alternative out of that analysis next spring, in spring of 2025, and then perform a full environmental analysis and complete a NEPA document. And for those of you that remember, last NEPA stands for National Environmental Policy Act. But that's what we call an environmental document. That is basically a decision document which documents a decision by the Federal Highway Administration as to what moves forward. So the department will be preparing that document and sharing that in the fall of 2025. And then Adriana is going to tell us where we go from here tonight.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you to all of our presenters for that information. Okay, so today kicks off our formal comment period that is open through May 24th. So what does this mean? That means that you, the public, can submit public comments that will be reviewed by the study team, and all of your comments will be considered in our decision. We anticipate sharing another comment summary around June. So how can you leave your comments? The first step is that survey that we handed you at the door. You'll have time to fill that out after the presentation and as you circulate the room. And you can submit it at the door. There's a box up front that says comments, and you can submit it there. It's okay if you don't fill out the whole thing. We know it's long, so any feedback that you have for us is very helpful. You can also submit comments at our website. We also have a comment form. You can email us, you can call us, or you can even mail your comment to us. After the Q&A, we're going to take some time to complete those surveys. If you didn't get one, you can still get one up front. So there are stations throughout the room that you can follow to fill out your survey packet. There are tables with pens that you can sit down and guys can talk to each other and make your decisions. Again, you can drop that survey box you can drop your survey in the box, or you can give it to any of our team members as well. If you happen to leave during the Q&A, I just want to extend my sincere thank you for you being here. We really appreciate it. All right, we're excited to hear all your questions. Question number 1.
Thank you. Good evening. My number is 1. I live in the South Broadway neighborhood, and my question is, has there been any attempt to work with the Albuquerque Police Department to reduce the speeding on I-25? I realize that the speed limit is slower through the S-curve, as it needs to be given the curve, and there are a lot of places within our state that people will not speed because the fines are tremendous. People do not speed in San Isidro or in Rio Rancho or Corrales or Los Ranchos or in Cuba, New Mexico, because the speed limits are strictly enforced. And I haven't driven that part of I-25 for several years, but I've rarely seen police, either motorcycle police or patrol cars, and I just wondered if an attempt has been made to deal with the safety issue in that manner first. Thank you.
Would you like a quick answer? You might not be a great answer, but so the enforcement agency that oversees enforcement along the interstate highway system is the New Mexico State Patrol, State Highway Patrol, and I believe they do the best job they can covering the miles of highway they have. But other than that, I can't speak specifically for their protocol in the specific area.
Hi, I'm number 2. My name's David Cook. I'm a resident of Huning Highland, which is to the west of that bend. This is a neighbourhood where people have put a lot of time and love and effort into that neighbourhood, and there's some beautiful historical homes. The impact of straightening this would be horrendous on a number of levels. And I'm going to kind of echo what that other lady said. Aggressive speed enforcement, serious aggressive speed enforcement for that whole stretch. I'm talking flashing lights, speed cameras, aggressive enforcement of tickets and police presence. Now, your answer was that that's just something that's difficult to do. But your presentation is about rebuilding a freeway. Millions and millions of dollars impacting historical homes, mad impact. But yet, to reorganize one department to implement law, as that lady said, it's something that's carried out throughout the immediate area successfully. So, implementing speed control too much, impacting a complete historical neighborhood and rebuilding a freeway with perhaps hundreds of millions of our tax-paying dollars, that's perfectly okay. So that's the thing that doesn't equate for me. Thank you.
Thank you for the comment. We definitely appreciate the feedback about desired enforcement. Just to add a little bit to what Mike said, state statutes are the laws that set the fines in place for ticketing, and we definitely appreciate the feedback of wanting to hear about engaging the law enforcement agency stakeholder. That's something that this study team can carry forward.
All right, number 3. Took notes as we were going on. Every Isotopes game, there are people parking in my neighborhood and walking up Cesar Chavez, and there's minimal sidewalks and stuff, so development there. I appreciate the thoroughness being displayed here. I feel heard and seen, but I kind of still have my hackles up. I'd like to mention Anthony De La Flora did an incredible talk on the South Broadway neighborhood at the Albuquerque Museum in 2023. It's on YouTube. The heritage here is like beyond measure, like with blacks fleeing the Jim Crow South to come live here in the only place they could, and mining towns built in 1890 and stuff. Part 4, there's a descanso, right as you exit Cesar Chavez going south. Those are protected by state legislature to a degree kind of unlike any other state. I clean and attend to ones that are kind of forgotten, and that's one of them. If that just gets mowed down or lost, it's like he died again, and I don't think that's okay. But lastly, let's recognize that these civil engineers can only do so much for safety when APD is as useless as it is. After 10 years of oversight and $12 million going to one man, APD police are still killing more people than ever before. That man's name is James Ginger. He's a con man. He can rot in hell.
And number 4, And I first wanted to echo the comments from the first two speakers about how basically the no-build option should consider what would happen if we spent the couple $100 million on things that make things better, just not necessarily building. But my main concern is the analysis of the interchanges didn't have any consideration for what the impact of the interchange designs would be on bicycle and pedestrian safety, how easy it is to do safe infrastructure around those interchanges, what the impact of having those on-ramps, off-ramps, frontage roads would be for bicycle pedestrian. And so I would really like to see that going forward. Also, there was, on the alignment, the impact of what the alignment would do for buildings. Similarly, what having new frontage roads, having new on-ramps, what that does for buildings. I know there is a park where in alternatives A and B would put a new frontage road. It seems like that would put a frontage road right next to a park, which would be kind of bad. You know, you're playing soccer and then your kid has to go catch the ball in the middle of the frontage road. That would be awful. And so I'd really like to see more attention paid to bicycle pedestrian safety and convenience in terms of the interchange infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you. Number 5, Central New Mexico Community College is in the process of reviewing the potential impacts of this project, and we will be providing a formal written response at a later date, and I just wanted to go on record with that. Thank you.
Hi, I'm number 6. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to exchange ideas. I'm very concerned not only with the safety on I-25, but also on lead and coal. Access to I-25 from those streets induces demands onto roads that are all too dangerous for cyclists and pedestrians. I'm wondering if, in your consideration, you were also considering completely eliminating highway on-ramps on lead and coal, as they induce that dangerous traffic and requires lots of merging across lanes. I don't drive myself, but it's always the part where I'm like holding my breath, terrified. Thank you.
Yeah, I can probably speak to that a little bit. So when Alonzo was talking, I mean, he actually showed up where we're seeing crash experience with regard to both vehicle pedestrian and vehicle bicycle. And the lead and coal area is definitely an area where there's a lot happening in above the average, or what you would normally expect. And sometimes it's twice as much as you expect. So yeah, I think we share your concerns. The specific treatments that end up recommended for that would probably arise out of the specifics of each intersection. That being said, that the bicycle community has pretty routinely expressed a desire to have as much barrier separated, facility separating them with a physical barrier between them and the traffic where possible through those very active areas. So I think, probably see a lot of that as part of this ultimate solution. So I don't know if that helps answer some of your questions.
That does help a little bit. I'm also just like a little bit concerned about the inducing demand concerns.
Yeah.
And I know there's been talks in the city about taking a lane from each and making them into separated bike lanes. And I'm wondering if that's something you're also working on or thinking about, that particular curveball.
Yeah, really all of that's on the table at this point. Right? Until we get a little bit further on and we know a little bit more some of the configurations, because I think that the specific circumstances for each location are going to guide what ends up coming out for as far as active transportation or non-motorized transportation modes. Right?
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Hi, I'm number 7. I first of all want to echo the first few speakers. There's many potential solutions that will solve these problems much cheaper, and that would not have such an impact on our neighborhoods. But assuming you go forward with this plan, I live in the Huning Highlands neighborhood, and I walk and bike for my daily commuting. And for the most part, it's a lovely neighborhood to walk, with some big exceptions, mostly the highway. Crossing the highway is not fun in either walking or cycling, even though you can walk. There's pedestrians infrastructure. It's still not fun to walk across several lanes of a frontage road where motorists are used to going 50, 60, 70 miles per hour and not always looking out for you. Same with lead and coal. These are neighborhood streets with people's houses there, and yet they feel like crossing a highway. So if I walk south from Central, it's all neighborhood roads. I can walk on the road itself, no traffic, and then I get to lead and coal, and it feels like I'm crossing a highway. And so, given the amount of pedestrian traffic and concentration in that, like East Downtown, Healing Highlands area, I wonder why you're not considering in any of your options an option that gets rid of ramps and frontage roads in that East Downtown area, let's say between Cesar Chavez and Lomas. You don't need 3-4 different on and off ramp in that small section, especially since it will come at I hear the traffic concerns, but it will come at the cost of pedestrian and cyclist real safety and perceived safety. So would you consider options that we completely remove on and off ramps near Central, lead, coal, and the frontage road to prioritize pedestrians, not just prioritize traffic?
Let me understand. Let me make sure I understand your question. So you're suggesting to eliminate the ramps
and the frontage road.
And the frontage road. Okay.
Is that something you will consider? Because I don't see it in any of the options.
We hadn't considered that, but first is suggested something we might think about. Yeah. Okay.
Number 8 looks like maybe the last person, but I want to thank the people of this area in this meeting here because I was born and raised here, left, and when I retired, came back. And what a wonderful job you've done with this community. Restoration of homes, isotopes, all the great activities. It's a great place to live. Wonderful job. So thank you to everyone here. The second thing is, just to add to this, the gentleman saying that you're giving examples of this. This is possible. Paseo Norte is a perfect example of that. You can't get off and on. And a lot of the primary areas there as they go through, which lends itself to maintaining the culture in that area, the environment and everything. So just an example for that individual there. For me, just newly moved here, and you mentioned something earlier about age. I have a lot of, we're reaching that pinnacle, we're looking. So we sit right in the nucleus of this change. And I see it, whether you use I option, you still have exchange options, where it impacts Lotus and the park area. So in the interim, what are you thinking about for individuals who live in what I'll call the front line, that it's going to happen somehow, some way? You're going to be dealing with either a frontage road. What are our options as far as who just moved there? And if it is going to happen, so rather than living life day by day, thinking what's going to come or not come, have they thought about that? If you understand my question.
Yeah, let me make sure I understand. So you're asking if this takes a number of years to get to the point where actually something does happen, what do you do in the interim?
Right.
I think what you're doing is probably the most important thing you can do right now is be involved in the conversation and help guide the process through your comments and your feedback. Because if you're invested in the neighborhood, as you say, that you obviously care, that hearing your concerns, hearing issues that come up from the community, without that engagement, we may not know, right? So hearing that's important. So you being involved, and I think beyond that, staying informed and help to guide your own decisions, right?
Well, I understand that, and that's why I'm here, and I appreciate that. But I'm not down on Broadway. I'm not down on by the rail. I'm like on the front line, and I'm like on the direct impact point. You know what I mean? And so I'm sitting here going, do I add a fence to my property? Do I do this or do I? So is there any kind of relief for, and maybe there's not, but I just thought I'd mention it because that is very stressful as well for us individuals that are sitting right there. So.
Yeah, so I mean, I think what you're getting at is more of a right-of-way process and what actually happens if you're actually directly affected. Probably an easier conversation if we want to take it out and have it in the hall. We can get into more of the details of that. Yeah, because there's a lot to it, and I don't know that. Yeah, there's a lot to it. So yeah,
but thank you for hearing.
You bet, absolutely.
Good evening, everybody. Number 9, it says. To me, 9 in German means no. So my name is Philip Archuleta. I'm here because Deputy Clerk, leader of the Clerks of City Hall, sent me from 311. I don't know what he does. I don't know who he is. But I came down here because I heard something's happening in my community. Last night, I was shooting a film. Last month, I was in handcuffs. Tonight, I'm here to talk to you. As soon as I walked in here, I felt a heartbeat coming from a local gym. And really quick, I noticed that out of 163 comments, all of a sudden we got all this change because it took one person to talk to 6 people to bring 3 here. You ask why so many people are down on Martin Luther King Boulevard? There's a hospital there. You ask how the community is still surviving? San Jose Elementary. Talk about cookie cutter programs. Look how the art bus in the Central program is working. Working on Central. We got a free program, giving everybody everything. Quit handing it away, give them the opportunity. So I ask you, how many of you and your leaders have walked or biked with the mayor through these areas and talked to his voters? And 163 comments is what percentage of his supporters who sleep under those highways? I ask you this not only as a veteran, but as a citizen. I understand you're an engineer, sir. You told me you were born in 1961. To me, engineers mean engines. You have the drive, you have the motivation. But I think you need guidance from your left and your right. Somebody right in front of you. So that's why I came up here to talk to you. I understand that you use these $10 words and these $16 sentences to confuse people. You use an 8-year study, and you tell me no budget. For 50 years, it becomes historic. But you at 63 were supposed to still listen to? I think it's time to take a step back and let us take charge. Mr. George reminds me a lot of George Washington because he sees what's coming. That man has foresight, like a forefather. A lot of times I keep hearing state problems. I can tell you, I've called 311, 242 cops. I've been to the police oversight. And I found out there's an internal investigation to my arrest without me even filing a complaint. So I'm not here to tell you that this sounds like a state problem. I don't know what we're doing here. You want to talk to somebody, have the mayor come talk to me. And I understand your job, your passion. Again, you're an engine, your drive. As a mechanic, I'm here to explain it to you. Here to help you and help other people understand, break down, give them change. $10 words, I'll break it into 2 5s. And if I got to break it down to my last 2 cents, this is it. And everybody hears fear. That's all I keep hearing is fear. I know fear. I know death. And I know life. Here to tell you that you need to learn to work with extreme caution, but also extreme prejudice. If you can do these 2 things, you will learn what prestigious means at the most basic level. I'm no college man. This hat means nothing to me. The hat that I want to wear says New Mexico and Albuquerque. And if people want to get out of here, that sounds like a state and a federal problem on how fast they want to go out. But instead of trying to make these changes and giving people a more direct line on how to get safe, how about giving them the opportunity to slow down? And just like a leader of these people, as I'm standing in front of them and none of them see me, I don't know how they're looking at me. Because I'm here to defend them against you. Only with my words, not with violence. But in order for me to be a good leader, I can't sit here and talk all day and try to fight for the future. Instead, I got to take one step back. I got to turn around. Where's George at? I need some foresight from a forefather and the man who spoke before me. I'm not asking you to do anything, but on your way to City Hall, going through lead, you want to be a leader? Go through lead to 4th Street. And on your way there, grab somebody from under these bridges, get them registered to vote, and get them in one program, because all they can do is sit and wait. I keep getting told, be calm, be patient, and wait your turn. Those are the 3 rules to happiness. I'm only asking you to pick 2, and you'll find the 3rd on your own. Do you have any questions for me, sir?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Oh, by the way, hang on. I don't want to be a politician before you start clapping for me. I don't want the social media. I've already talked to the ACLU to keep this quietly because I want Albuquerque safe. I want New Mexico safe. I don't want to be a leader. I'm looking for that leader. That's why I'm not running for politics. I'm walking for mayor because that's who has the most say in this city. Now, thank you.
Number 10. I know that the study team met with APS in September. Did you all meet with UNM as well?
We have not. We've worked on getting in contact with them, and they haven't responded so far. Thanks, Bob.
Number 11. My name's Aiden. I live just off of Avenida Cesar Chavez. Thank you. And I regularly bike on Avenida through the I-25 intersection. It's Avenida Cesar Chavez is on our official City of Albuquerque bike map. It's marked as a bike-friendly street. I'm going to go out on a limb and assume whoever designed that map never biked that street. It's terrifying. It's a huge street. The on and off ramps are especially dangerous, and there's not even a sidewalk. So I have to choose between biking in the street or dragging my bike through the dirt on the side of the road. And I could go to coal and lead if I wanted to add an extra mile or two to my commute, but that's scary too. The whole I-25 has created a barrier that takes two of the most walkable and bikeable parts of our city, two, in my opinion, of the best, most pleasant parts of our city. It puts a barrier in the middle that makes it almost impossible to get between them on a bike. And I have some of my neighbors and friends won't even bike to get places that are just a mile or less away because they're too scared of dealing with the danger of the cars speeding down the on or off ramps from the highway with a 2-foot wide bike lane on lead and nothing on Avenida. So I just want to say I'm disappointed to see that there's not more attention being paid to remedying that damage in this plan. And I really hope you reconsider that.
I think we agree with you. Totally.
I'm number 12. I live in South Broadway. Unfortunately, I can't bike commute to work. I have to drive. I was just a little confused about the interstate exchange plans, and maybe it's because they're kind of hard to see. But it does look like two of the options completely eliminate the lead coal on-off ramps. Is that correct? So my concern there, one, I actually think they're very easy to use. I know that's maybe not an opinion shared by everyone else. But if we eliminate that, there's already so much traffic, people who work downtown, people who work at UNM, that especially 4 or 5 p.m. are trying to get on I-25. So my concern is if we eliminate the on-off ramps at lead, that pushes more traffic to the central MLK, Lomas, that already got consolidated because we got rid of the MLK on-ramp. So I'm just wondering how the interstate exchange addresses, taking what was 3 on-ramps into 1. Yeah, I just didn't understand the map, so that's my question.
If you want, we can spend time at the board about
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So number 13. So my question's pretty simple. So if you do end up moving the freeway, what happens to the land that's no longer part of I-25? Alignment option I could open up land in the South Broadway neighborhood. Who would own that land? And would NMDOT make an effort to restitch that reclaimed land back into the neighborhood?
Yeah, I think that's a possibility. I don't think we know what that entails yet or how much that would entail with that, but I think those are all possibilities.
Hello, I am number 14. I live in Huning Highlands, which is a National Historic neighborhood. If we destroy our past, we have no future. It's very obvious. And I'm wondering, every single plan is going to the west. You've got here, a curve here. Why not just make it straight? Why not just take it to the east? To me, that makes more sense and certainly would not impact the people who have spent lifetimes keeping our history alive, which is South Broadway, Martinez Town, Huning Highlands. It's important that we do that. Thank you.
Hi, I'm number 15. My question is what's going to happen to the property that's south? You say you're going south, but I was speaking to a woman out there, and she was telling me that I doesn't affect any properties. The other problem is I've been an employee with C&M for 24 years, and I use those exits. That's the way I move around, is that lead and coal exit. Every day. I would have to take more time to get here, more time to go anywhere that I go.
Yeah, so I does affect property. It's just on the east side of the interstate. And then if you want, probably easier with the boards for me to kind of show how the routing would work. And we actually have a set of boards along this wall over here that shows how the different options that we're proposing to forward for those ramp configurations, how it affects some of the predominant trips and how you would route with each of those. So there's a little bit more information on that.
I understand that, but you're going to affect the way I move around on a daily basis. You're going to affect the way students move around on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And anybody who lives in this area.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for your questions and your comments. We're going to go ahead and wrap it up. Again, if you filled out that survey packet, please turn it in, or you can fill it out online as well. Don't forget to leave it at the front. And if you needed assistance from anyone while you guys are navigating the boards, just find someone with a name tag and we'll be happy to help you. Again, thanks everyone for coming and have a good evening.